So pleased to see candidates slide in at the last minute there. Okay, good morning. Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis vraiment fière aujourd'hui d'être ici à Toronto pour lancer notre plateforme. So I'm very proud and happy to be here in Toronto to launch our platform. It is the complete platform, but I have to say we will be launching its budget within the week. We did not want to release a platform without a budget, but we are still waiting on a couple of planks that the Parliamentary Budget Office is working on. I spoke to the senior analyst there today. The issue is now translating some of our planks because Parliamentary Budget Office rules require, of course, that they be issued in both official languages, even to us internally. So the budget will be coming and released to back all of this up within a week, but we didn't want to have a short election campaign. We're now, the writ period of 36 days. We were in a 40-day writ. We're now down to day 35. Our candidates need the platform. Canadians need the platform. So here we are in Toronto with a number of our candidates from GTA going to as far away as Kingston and the Islands and a few from Hamilton. And we are very happy that they all could join me here today. So if you have cameras, you might want to look. Imaginez que vous avez un nouveau casse-tête. Toutes les pièces sont là, devant vous et votre famille, particulièrement autour d'une table. Elles sont de bons côtés, de toutes les couleurs, mais nous n'avons pas le dessus de la boîte qui montre la casse-tête complétée. So this is our situation in Canada, and this is where our platform stands. We have everything we need to solve all the problems we face. Everything. We have the resources, we have human brain power, we have community spirit, we have government powers, we have a toolbox that we've barely opened yet. We have everything we need to solve a puzzle. We have all of the pieces. Nothing is missing. But there's something missing, because in this country we don't have vision. We don't have the picture on the top of the box. It's really hard to solve a jigsaw puzzle, even when all the pieces are there, everything you need is there, until you have the top of the box. And without the top of the box, so our platform is the vision of what Canada looks like in 2030. And it's the steps we will take, particularly in our first term in office, if we were to form government, to actually deliver the Canada we want. C'est absolument nécessaire, c'est aussi vraiment possible. C'est pour ça que notre programme pour réduire les gaz à effet de serre s'appelle Mission Possible. C'est vraiment possible, mais c'est pas facile. So our climate plan is Mission Possible. That is also a picture on the top of the box. How do we address the climate emergency? Well, you can't address the climate emergency without taking it seriously. That's why we call it Mission Possible. It's not Mission Easy, but it's possible. And this platform also lays out more details on where we go with that. So to lay out, recently purchased at the Salt Spring Bookstore, just saying. To lay out our platform, it covers a broad suite of measures. It is comprehensive. It speaks to social justice. Just as in 2015, when we were the only party talking about pharmacare 4 years ago, we're so pleased that now everybody's talking about pharmacare, even those who don't understand it and don't want to do it. We are absolutely committed to 100% universal, single-payer pharmacare because it will reduce costs in our healthcare system, and it will deliver to Canadians medications their doctors think they need without further making their life more unaffordable. We'll also address the housing crisis. For social housing, we understand the issue is housing first. For young people trying to buy a house, the issue is homes first. And our program goes into housing affordability. We also make life way more affordable for young people by not setting them out in life crushed by student debt. So, as in 2015, we pledged to abolish tuition. We do it again for post-secondary institutions, universities, and trade schools, and colleges. And the importance of this is that we are modern industrialized countries. Countries around the world offer no tuition, university accessible to all. But we know our universities have been suffering from financial insecurity. So we also inject $10 billion to post-secondary through federal provincial transfer payments tied to making sure this is for post-secondary education, because our post-secondary education institutions are in trouble. We provide full dental to low-income Canadians, and the biggest step for social justice since the 1960s and the Parliament, a minority parliament, by the way, the Parliament of Lester B. Pearson's minority Liberal government, was the last time that we really were bold and addressed social justice issues at the level of a federation. So it was in the 1960s. Oh, thank you. You don't have to applaud every line, Greens. It's okay. I love you, and it's great you came out so early, and thank you. And I know the traffic and the subways were terrible. Here's the thing. In the minority Liberal Parliament of Lester B. Pearson, and when people say, oh, a minority parliament, what could it do? With cooperation, you can do anything. You can do anything if you don't care who gets the credit. And that was the way Parliament used to be. So in the 1960s, under Lester B. Pearson, we got our universal health care system, the Canada Health Act. We also got the Canada Pension Plan. We also got unemployment insurance. We also got student loans, but with no interest attached. And we got the flag, so there's that too. This is, for me, a model of how Parliament should work. But we have not had anything equally bold in 50 years, more than 50 years. So here we are, 60 years. Here we are saying it's time. It's time to bring in the piece that should have been in the Canada Health Act from the beginning, universal pharmacare. It's time to bring forward where something that's so bold, but it is necessary. We are wealthy enough as a country to actually eliminate poverty. It will take more than we hope to do it in the first term, but it takes cooperation provincially and federally. So guaranteed livable income for all is something we can and must do. One reason is we're going to be facing artificial intelligence, and in the world of work, things will be changing. Other parties may design their platforms based on looking in the rearview mirror. We're looking ahead, we're seeing what's coming. Artificial intelligence is coming, we've got to be prepared, and a guaranteed livable income is one of the most important ways we can inoculate our society against disruptions for which we're not prepared. We also must move ahead to look at what's coming at us, which is the climate emergency. And most of what people have heard us talk about so far in the campaign has been related to climate. But look at the many ways in which steps on the climate emergency have an impact on other parts of our ways of life. For instance, in this platform, we call for universal child care. It's another aspect of what makes life more livable for families. It's a step towards true equality for women, is to have universal child care access. But how does that relate to the climate emergency? We want to promote child care spaces for early childhood education, where workers in that field are recognized as committed to a green job. Workers in early childhood education, those are green jobs. But we also know that where we give parents the opportunity to put their child in a child care facility co-located with where they work, it makes it way easier to pick up on the public transit opportunities, so that when you're getting on your electric bus to go to work in 2030, you're headed in the same direction with your kids because their enriched early education opportunity is located near where you work, preferably in the same building. We've made a big commitment in this platform to our cities, and I'm standing on stage here somewhere with me is Tim Grant, who's the Shadow Cabinet critic on cities and infrastructure. It's critical that our cities get a seat at the table. Right now we have the same, because of the Constitution of 1867, our municipal order of government is treated as though it's a child of the province. We break out of this box with the Council of Canadian Governments. Does not require reopening the Constitution. Le Conseil du gouvernement canadien, c'est une innovation du Parti vert du Canada, et il est vraiment proche à le modèle qui était maintenant utilisé en Australie. So in Australia, they have a Council of Australian Governments in which the federal government of Australia is not unlike Canada, except for, of course, we weren't all founded by prisoners who were sent here by the UK, but never mind. Where Australia has an unfair lower house voting system, just like ours. One difference in the Australian system is they now elect their Senate under proportional representation, which is the Green Party of Canada proposal as well. But in Australia, they do have, where we have provinces, they have states. So the Australian innovation was to say the Council of Australian Governments is the federal government sitting with the state government, sitting with the municipal order of government. We take it the next step. The Council of Canadian Governments will be established to ensure that we have policy alignment, that we share goals across orders of government so that we can move towards the same goal. It's obviously trite to say that there's only one taxpayer, but taxpayers do get frustrated by seeing that their province is taking their money and moving in one direction, the federal government is trying to move in a different direction, and nobody's really talked to the municipalities at all. Under the Council of Canadian Governments, we would have a table with 4 quadrants. First would be a quadrant for Indigenous leadership, leadership from First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. Second quadrant, municipal leadership, and we suggest that the Federation of Canadian Municipalities find a representative group with big city mayors and rural and remote representation. The provinces are represented in the third quadrant, the federal government in the fourth, and there'd be one that looked at the major national issues, but we'd break down, just as they do now in Australia, with specific subtables around specific issues, trying to work to consensus. That's the green model for how we work, to consensus, to identify policy goals so that we all pull in the same direction. In so doing, we also commit significant funds to the municipalities of Canada, the continuation of what used to be called the gas tax fund. We think it should just be called the municipal fund because it's been de-linked from gas taxes for some time. We commit to doing things with our municipal order of government to give them a voice at the table so that we work better as a federation. There's a great deal in this platform, and I won't be able to dive into all of it. I can tell you that although the Parliamentary Budget Office is still crunching our numbers, we're quite confident that we found the revenue to pay for these promises, or we wouldn't take the chance of releasing a platform today and the budget next week. But we do have new sources of revenue. We're going to raise the corporate business tax level, not for small business, but for larger transnational and bigger Canadian enterprises to 21% corporate business tax. We're going to create a 0.2% tax on every financial transaction. We're going to go after the offshore money. We're going to deal with the problem of e-commerce. These companies that first came to us that seemed virtual and cool, and how could they be damaging? Not only are these companies, whether they're Facebook or Google or Amazon or Airbnb or Netflix, they operate in this country, take billions of dollars of profits out of this country, pay virtually no tax. Worse than that, we've created an unlevel playing field so our local newspapers, if an organization or a government puts an ad in the local newspaper, it affects the bottom line in taxes. If they put it in Google or Facebook, they don't. We've got to close that loophole. We've got to do more to protect Canadian journalism and Canadian media from the offshore practices of what looked to be like this cool friend that we friended on Facebook. Sorry, not our friend, which also brings me to the question of privacy. We're going to do a more detailed press conference tomorrow on privacy, but Greens are very concerned about the invasion of our privacy. We want to make sure that our privacy legal regime also applies to political parties. We're looking at e-commerce and looking at what happened with Airbnbs. How is it that it's so hard to find an affordable house? Well, in British Columbia, in any case, 20% of our housing stock has been taken out of the market where people can afford to live in those homes because it's now in Airbnbs. We thought it was our friends and neighbors letting a nice person from somewhere else come stay in their home. It's turned into a giant multinational where people buy up properties for the purpose of operating largely outside the regulatory framework that applies to this hotel. In this hotel, hundreds of people are employed. People pay, the hotel chain pays to meet the regulatory hurdles of health and safety, the regulatory hurdles, provincial and federally. They pay tax, they pay their employees, they're held to a standard. Airbnbs are competing with Canadian small business, but not within our tax regime. We're also looking for more revenue in a number of other pockets and areas to make sure that we can pay for all our promises. But we're quite convinced we can, which brings me to a place where we have savings. And that is, even though every government in Canada, starting with, this may surprise you, Stephen Harper in 2009 pledged to end subsidies to fossil fuels. In 2015, Justin Trudeau was elected on a platform that included a pledge to end fossil fuel subsidies. Instead, they expanded them. They expanded them by the billions. So we will end fossil fuel subsidies in the first year in government. It's easy to do. We also stand for democratic institutional reform. We will bring back in front of everyone one of the big missing puzzle pieces to better government and fairer voting. And of course, it should be over by now. I'm sure we all remember it. We probably can say it in unison. 2015 will be the last election held under first past the post. Oh, KTEL's greatest hits of broken promises. We can go there. We have to bring this back. And I'll tell you why. It's often mischaracterized in the media that we want to get rid of first past the post because it benefits the Greens. That's not why. It benefits democracy. We live in a country where, thanks to... La question de changement de notre façon de scrutin de vote, c'est vraiment primordial dans l'intérêt de la vraie démocratie. In this era, when people who we would have thought, even about, being that I'm 65, I don't think it was so long ago, but maybe for some of my younger candidates, they don't remember a time when it would have been impossible to imagine people who represented a sort of vacant populism with no government experience who could come to office on a bully pulpit. We can't be sure that we wouldn't have such a candidate or such a leader in our future. In Canada, unlike in the United States, where they have separation of power and checks and balances, in a Westminster parliamentary parliament, a prime minister whose party holds the majority of seats has a majority government, regardless of how much of the population actually wanted that government. It can be as little as 30% of the vote now that we have 6 parties competing for federal seats, but certainly 39% of the vote has delivered majority parliaments in recent memory. What that means is the minority of the population can elect a majority government in which the leader has 100% of the power. To protect us from a future dictator-style populist with no background and not consistent with our core values as Canadians, they could get 100% of the power with less than 50% of the popular vote. We have to change our voting system before that individual comes along. We have to inoculate democracy against a future leader for Canada that we would right now find unacceptable and appalling. I'm speaking of a hypothetical person, no one in particular, but you can see how this could happen. We need to ensure that our voting system no longer delivers 100% of the power to a party with less than half of the public support. That's why Greens will bring back in front of everyone the reasons we changed. Now, we also want to do root and branch tax reform. We haven't had a tax commission since the 1960s. Our tax code has become heavily larded with boutique tax cuts and various measures, most of which benefit the very wealthy. Some benefit the poor, no question. But we need to have a review of our tax system to ensure that it is fair. So in all of this, I'm going to stop because I know there will be questions from media. I usually don't give a long opening statement this long, but I know I haven't touched the surface of all of our policies. I want to close by saying that fundamental to every single step in this policy book, in this platform, is the other broken promise that no relationship is more important to us than our relationship with Indigenous peoples. We have to mean it this time. We have to be committed to bringing in the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. We have to legislate it in Canada, commensurate to the commitment we've made internationally. We have to fulfill the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where they apply to the federal government, because those were a broad sweep of measures. We also have to meet the challenge of the inquiry of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And we can do this by accepting that we're on an intergenerational journey, because the colonialism, oppression, and cruelty, what the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women called the structural violence of our current legislative system, can't be changed in a blink of an eye, and we have to do it in full concert with the self-determination and the rights of self-determination of Indigenous peoples across Canada. We're prepared to do that, but it starts with recognizing that we have to make very substantial changes, and the burden of this journey falls mostly on settler Canadians to understand the wrongs that were done and why we are committed to setting things right. It won't be overnight, but it starts with really understanding Section 35 of our Constitution. It starts with recognizing UNDRIP. It starts with passing into law the bill that was stalled in the Senate. We have a lot of things we want to say about what we stand for as Greens. Fundamentally, what we stand for is rescuing our democracy and our parliament from corporate influence and corporate control, by rescuing our democracy and our parliament from the constant interventions of backroom political spin doctors and staffers who, in the short time of my life in which I've worked in Ottawa, I did work in government in the 1980s, and that parliament was not dominated by spin doctors from back rooms telling the Prime Minister, this is a good law to pass, because you can use this as a wedge issue in the next election. Wedge issues and dog whistle politics are contaminating Parliament itself. We are committed to making our Parliament more respectful, more effective, delivering for Canadians what they really want. And I believe what Canadians really want is peace, order, and green government. Thank you very much. By the way, you'll notice some of us are wearing this little circular rainbow pin. And it's very clear from the opening of the platform, you'll see why. We're the only party in Canada that recognizes that Canada's commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals is a commitment that our government took on. It's not just to say that we do all these things by 2030 in terms of our international development assistance. These goals, access to clean drinking water, ending poverty, ensuring that no one is hungry. These Sustainable Development Goals are central to our platform, and that's why you'll see the icons for each UN Sustainable Development Goal aligned with the platform promise. C'est le but des Nations Unies d'avoir le développement durable et pour arriver en 2030. So 2030 is a big year because that's the top of the box, 2030. That's where we're going on climate action, 2030. That's when we deliver on ending poverty in Canada and around the world by 2030. It's an exciting time to be alive because we actually can do all these things, but not with business as usual. So I open the floor to questions, but I have to say to all wonderful volunteers who are here, it's only the accredited media that can ask questions today, so I open the floor to anyone who wants to ask a question. Yes. C'est équilibré dans 5 ans. Je veux dire encore, désolé que nous n'avons pas le chiffre aujourd'hui. Ce n'est pas la faute de quelqu'un. Je suis vraiment dit clairement, je veux souligner que nous avons un niveau d'appréciation vers le bureau parlementaire budgétaire pour leur travail. C'est seulement une question de quelques journées. Mais notre plateforme, c'est pas cher. On doit le faire. c'est un bon marché de sauver toute l'humanité dans les prochaines 10 années. Un bon marché. C'est un bon marché. L'existence de la pauvreté, ça c'est vraiment cher. C'est un coût énorme. Et le plus grand coût dans notre société pour les personnes à abri, c'est pour 100 000 $ par année pour emprisonner quelqu'un. C'est un bon marché d'avoir les abordements pour les gens sans abri. Et nous avons les chiffres aussi parce que le programme d'assurance médicaments, par exemple, va réduire les coûts de notre système de santé publique. Parce que les grandes entreprises pharmaceuticales, oui, pharmacie. Oui, c'est affreux que je demande à un journaliste de Radio-Canada pour aider moi. Donc, ouais, l'entreprise Big Pharma. Alors, il a les coûts des médicaments absolument sans justification. Il coûte peut-être quelques dollars pour un drogue, mais c'est possible, et il arrive chaque journée, qu'il va charger de 200 $, 300 $ ou des milliers de dollars, parce que le coût de médicaments, ce n'est pas bien renseigné dans les vrais coûts pour mettre les drogues sur le marché. Alors, on doit réduire les coûts de notre système de santé publique avec un programme d'assurance médicaments universel. Et les chiffres sont disponibles prochaine semaine. Merci pour la question. Yes. Okay, forgive me, please, because I have a thing about the term running for prime minister because I am a democracy parliamentarian nerd. No one runs to be prime minister in this country, but we've been presidentializing our system at our peril. So yes, I think I am the best qualified to be Prime Minister of Canada. I will say that out loud. But I'll also say I don't think it's very likely. I have a lot of experience. I've worked in government starting in 1986. I worked in a government when Parliament worked well, when the civil service worked better than it does today, when every department of government understood its core competency area, when scientists within government dictated policy and not the politicians, well, not politicians, I'd have to say again, these backroom people who never stand for office, who control more of what goes on in our democracy than people who are qualified. With all of that, my goal is not, I have nothing against the NDP. I'm not running against the NDP. I'm running to elect as many of these wonderful candidates as is possible so that a caucus of Green MPs can assist Canadians, particularly in a minority situation, such as that occurred under Lester B. Pearson. It can be said that a party that never held power did more to put in place our social safety net than anyone else. It was a different era then for the NDP. Back in the 1960s, Tommy Douglas didn't care who got the credit. David Lewis didn't care who got the credit. They just wanted to make our lives better. And that's the kind of people we are now. We are people who are determined to make things better for Canadians. And if a government with a prime minister that isn't green gets all the credit, if we fix things for Canadians, if we make life more affordable, and if we give our children who are now out on school climate strikes, if we let them know we've got your back, we're not leaving you with this. We will not leave you with a climate emergency with galloping levels of global warming which imperil their future. So those are the things we care about. Overtaking the NDP isn't a goal. Ensuring we have good government and a strong parliament is our goal. Yeah. I'll go to Eric. That's right. No. And I'll tell you why. The strategic vote is to vote green. Right now, we're for the first time in my short career in politics, because I didn't join a political party till I was in my 50s. I stand with one of the founders of the German Green Party, who was a friend of mine, Petra Kelly, who used to describe the Greens as the anti-party party. I think partisan politics gets in our way. But set that aside. We have now, for the first time in my short political career, a split that is to 6 parties. There are 6 parties currently with MPs in the House of Commons. Well, the Parliament dissolved. So at the point of dissolution, 6 parties were represented. 6 parties will return some number of MPs. The split on the right of Max Bernier and the People's Party, even if it only gets 3 or 4% of the popular vote, is enough to shave off differences. When you really crunch down and look at the numbers, that's enough to shave off a number of Conservative seats. Meanwhile, we are picking up in support. We are going to elect a lot more members of Parliament, but we were willing to work across party lines. We don't want to make other people look bad. We want to make everybody look better. So when we get into a Parliament, I think the irony of Justin Trudeau's, I mean, it's not a broken promise that 2015 will be the last election under first past the post. That the words broken promise don't apply. Massive betrayal applies. Massive betrayal. So, but I think the irony, and there's deep irony in this, I think the Parliament that gets returned after October 21st may well look like a Parliament elected under fair voting. If every Canadian who has the right to vote gets out and votes, and they follow one piece of simple advice: vote for what you want. Vote for what you want, and you will get a government and a Parliament that requires that we do what Canadians want us to do, work together. Well, we have to always remember that the largest voting bloc in 2011, when Stephen Harper formed a majority government, if they'd formed government, would have been called the We Stayed Home Party, because more people didn't vote than voted Conservative. So I really do call on Canadians to ponder that and think about it, particularly if you're 18 and voting for the first time, or you're 23 and you haven't voted yet, or you're 40 and you got sick of it. Get out and vote. Whatever you would like to see happen to this country, look at the party platforms and vote for what you want. Parce qu'avec ça, je pense que c'est probablement, nous allons avoir un Parlement minoritaire. Et ça, c'est le résultat le plus possible. Mais vous avez raison, c'est pas possible de faire un scrutin de vote et choisir, je veux préférer maintenant un gouvernement minoritaire. It's not possible to go into a polling booth and vote for a minority parliament. But if every Canadian gets out and votes for what they want, and the more people who vote green, the better, because we will be much more likely then to have a Parliament with people who are more committed to working across party lines to accomplish good things for Canadians than for just the kind of continual Punch and Judy show we now see in our question period. We don't want that anymore. We want to actually make Parliament work for Canadians. So I'm not worried about that. We're going to take, people say, where do you want to take votes from? Greens don't split a vote. We grow a vote. Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of and when I say grow the vote, it's not a slogan that's empty. When I was elected in 2011, Saanich Gulf Islands had the highest voter turnout in the country, and I defeated a sitting Conservative cabinet minister. And I can tell you, for most of the campaign, what I heard was, Why are you running here? You're going to guarantee that Gary Lunn stays in power, and it's terrible because the vote will be split between the NDP, the Liberals, and the Greens, and you can't possibly win. So I heard that right up to the moment when I won. But when we won in 2011 in Saanich Gulf Islands, 75% voter turnout. When I was reelected in 2015, just under 80% voter turnout. But I'm not satisfied with that. Peter Bevan Baker, the leader of the Prince Edward Island Greens, first time he was elected with 92% voter turnout. So we don't want to see Canadians stay home anymore. And I don't want to be unkind because I want to work with these other leaders in Parliament later. But honestly, people worry about strategic voting, that they're going to have to choose the lesser of two evils. We're faced with the evil of two lessers. So I think that helps us reach people in the GTA. Parce que je veux dire à tout le monde canadien, québécois, québécoises, le vote avec le plus niveau de pouvoir, c'est un vote vert. Parce qu'il envoie un message. Regardez les résultats après les élections, dont l'élection partielle en Nanaimo Ladysmith. Le lendemain, après les élections de Paul Manley comme député de Nanaimo Ladysmith, le deuxième député vert élu au Canada, le Premier ministre Justin Trudeau a dit que je pense que peut-être les électeurs de Nanaimo Ladysmith sont préoccupés avec le changement climatique. Et dans une autre semaine, les deux partis, les libéraux, puis aussi NPD, ont présenté dans le Parlement leurs deux motions que nous sommes dans une situation d'urgence climatique. Je pense qu'ils ont réalisé dans une situation d'urgence électorale. Et c'est pour ça que nous avons un niveau de débat, mais quand même, quand j'ai fait mon discours dans le Parlement, c'est tout un mois après la présentation des motions, il a ajourné le débat et on recommencé le 17e juin. J'ai fait mon discours avec un appel pour les étapes non partisanes, pour travailler ensemble pour une solution d'urgence climatique, mais les autres chefs n'étaient pas là. Pas un seul chef dans la salle, parce que c'est la soirée de la grande célébration de victoire des Raptors, et Jagmeet Singh, puis Andrew Scheer, puis Justin Trudeau, ce n'est pas dans le Parlement pour les débats sur l'urgence climatique. Tous les trois sont ici à Toronto pour la célébration de victoire des Raptors. So you have to ask sometimes to people, where does your vote make a bigger difference? With one of your traditional parties, and you have to think about it. When did you last feel really good about your vote? When did you last think that vote had a lot of power? Je veux dire clairement que les électeurs de Nanaimo Ladysmith, maintenant, ils sont vraiment satisfaits avec leur décision de faire quelque chose que presque personne dans notre média national, presque personne dans les autres partis pense que c'est possible d'avoir un nouveau député vert à Nanaimo Ladysmith. Mais Paul Manley a gagné avec un très grand margin de victoire. Et c'est pour ça que je dis à tout le monde, pensez vert, votez vert, parce que votre vote a plus de pouvoir avec un vote vert que dans tous les autres. Sauf qu'il y a un autre député à élire. Mais les autres partis pensent que, faites attention, les verts avancent. Peut-être on doit faire quelque chose pour l'assurance médicale, pour quelque chose, pour l'urgence climatique, et pas seulement les petites étapes qui fait. Maintenant, nous n'avons pas un autre parti avec un plan pour vraiment éliminer le risque que nous allons perdre notre civilisation à cause de l'urgence climatique. Ce n'est pas une blague. On doit faire les choses vraiment difficiles et on doit le faire ensemble. She asked a question. Yes, go ahead. Sorry. Yes. It's a very good question. I have not yet spoken with him. The senior campaign management has spoken with him, And he has made a very credible case to them that he does not differ one iota from the party position that we support a woman's right to a safe and legal abortion. I haven't spoken with him yet, so you'd have to say the vetting process is not yet complete, because I do want to speak with him directly. But there are other circumstances, and the very poor first response which I heard, which was, I don't remember signing this petition, wasn't satisfactory to me. I just want to make one loop around and talk to him again. One was that he said that he filled out the petition the first time, and I want to double check, but he believes it was placed by the group on a second time without double checking with him. There's some of it is very personal about his and his wife's situation, hoping to have a child. I won't get into a lot of details, but they understand totally that a woman's right to a safe and legal abortion is essential in our country. We cannot go back to the days when women died because a bunch of men made a decision that we didn't control our own bodies. This is not negotiable. So we just want to make sure that he is completely, and because he did not declare, our process of vetting candidates, and all these candidates have gone through it, we need to know when you're vetted, is there anything in our policy with which you disagree? And if there is, depending on what the issue is, so we say, okay, so you don't agree with electing the Senate. Okay, fine. You're on board with climate change, you're on board with social justice, you can run. Or you don't agree with, so there's different, we want to know ahead of time, because in our effort, which I want to state as a positive, I can't believe we're being beaten up for believing in democracy, but we don't think it's right that a party leader is a dictator over every single MP. And as an MP who served in the House the last 8 years, I mean, a whipped vote is not an unusual occurrence. It's a daily occurrence. That's why members of Parliament don't read the legislation. Why bother? It can only make them feel miserable to vote for something they actually wouldn't want to do if they thought about it. I'm the only MP that I know who reads every bill. And I think about every bill. So I'm just going to finish and say, I have been in the House when members of Parliament have been whipped to vote against their own party policy. So I'm getting a lot of questions about, well, we know what Greens stand for. We stand for our values. But when I was the only member of Parliament to vote against bombing Libya, and NDP members of Parliament came up to me with their faces just stained with tears, because they were forced to vote for something that wasn't their party policy and which was against their personal conscience. Or when Conservatives came up to me, when they were whipped to vote that asbestos is safe. These whipped votes are really anti-democratic. So again, with the candidate in question, I do want to make sure that when he filled out the form, he did not identify that he disagreed with the party on abortion rights. And we went back to him and said, if you disagree with us on abortion rights, why did you not declare that? He said, because I don't disagree. I support a woman's right to a safe and legal abortion. So I want to speak with him personally before I can regard the matter as closed. Yeah. Well, equal coverage in this election will make a very big difference if it ever happens. Can I go back to the hand? Sorry. So I have to apologize. I missed the fact that journalists who are accredited were also back there. I'm so sorry. I don't want to be the kind of politician who targets other parties. We want to advance our own ideas. I don't know the gentleman in question. I hear he has a nice reputation. He's never been in the Green Party since I've been here, but that doesn't mean he's not a good candidate. I obviously want Pierre Nantel to be re-elected in Longueuil-Saint-Hubert, but we're here to talk to Canadians and give people hope that there is a party out there that doesn't do old politics, that we do things differently. And that means giving people a chance to explain themselves. It means allowing for the possibility of working together later. I think it's really important to say, now that I've mentioned Pierre Nantel, I find it appalling the way he's being attacked. He was recruited to federal politics by Jack Layton. Jack Layton trusted him. I gather Mr. Singh doesn't. But I'd also ask the New Democrats who they knew better and whose judgment they trust. Because I know that that I have no concern at all, having worked in Parliament with Pierre Nantel for 8 years, that he's somehow some sort of firebrand who wants to hurt this country. He wants to ensure that all of us are addressing the climate crisis. And that election just got more interesting with Mr. Ferland in the mix in Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. Yes. I love the way you put the question. And first of all, we were the first party to call for legalization of cannabis, and we don't think the Liberals got it right. We need to do a lot more work to fix the regulation of cannabis. We need to particularly address cannabis for health needs. It still is. It's actually made some situations worse by bringing it in. I feel as though when I first read the bill to legalize cannabis, I thought they drafted this after putting a bunch of people in a room and binge watching Reefer Madness till they then could legislate what to do with this very dangerous thing. It's very strange. So we do need to get back to that. We don't believe in shiny baubles. I feel as though every budget I've read for years has been like a Christmas tree with this here and that here, and this will buy off the parents with kids with autism for a little bit, and this will buy off the people who are really concerned about homelessness for a little bit. This will buy off those who are worried about, well, whatever. This platform represents something bold in every single category. We don't have time anymore for incremental steps. Our public broadcaster, our arts and culture sector, they dribs and drabs and tiny shiny baubles that don't actually address a crisis, leave everything simmering below the surface and not resolved. So what our platform is a solid offer for democracy. It's not trying to buy anybody's vote. It's trying to say this is what a properly formed government and parliament would be capable of doing if we all maintained a strong sense of duty, of ethics, of hard work, and doing it together. And we can do all these things together, including protecting the rights of sex workers, including a more progressive platform than any other party on LGBTQ trans rights at two-spirited rights, to make sure that programs, medications, healthcare, mental health supports. I haven't mentioned mental health yet this morning. Mental health and addiction crisis is huge. We would decriminalize the illicit drugs on the street so that we can ensure safe supply and make sure people aren't dying, not from overdoses. The current situation, people are dying from poisonings because fentanyl is contaminating a drug supply that is illicit, is illegal, but we can't address that crisis, which is so severe that it's actually affected our life expectancy as a country. We can't address that crisis with shiny baubles. We have to actually go to the root of the problem and fix it. Yes, go back here. No, the NDP did it a couple months ago. Well, I have to step back and say I was privileged this year, starting in February and ending in August, to go to every province and one of our territories in 34 town hall meetings. What I heard from Canadians is reflected in this platform. So in some places in the country, they're big, and it's huge, right? If you live in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, the Maritimes, most of Canada, we've just lost our bus service. So you can't get from Prince George to Vancouver without either flying or driving because the bus service is gone. And you can't get from Saskatchewan to Regina because the bus service is gone. A lot of people in this country feel things crumbling all around them. We wanted to address that, and we did in the context of a climate emergency. Every Canadian should have access to transit. Big urban centers need much better transit systems. Rural and remote Canadians need much better transit systems. It's an appalling scandal that we don't have transportation services the equivalent of Mexico for Canadians, right? So I don't know if there's one single thing as much as the themes. We have to take democracy back from political parties. We have to get transnational corporations out of running our governments. And we have to ensure that Canadians know that they have people who work hard for them and not for foreign corporations and other interests. It's much more about social justice, yes, pharmacare, yes, low-income dental, child care, eliminating tuition, yes, make life more affordable for our kids, take care of our seniors, do more for veterans. If anything, I guess what this platform tells Canadians, back to your question, is we're certainly not a one-issue party, unless the one issue is Canada. Any other journalists that I haven't caught your eye? Then I'll go back, yeah. It has to be much better designed. It's hard to imagine a system that was worse designed. One of the issues we have is that zero plastic in our society, but the regulations around cannabis require something virtually unrecyclable, a giant plastic, hard plastic canister. I am, by the way, unqualified to be leader of the Green Party of Canada because I have never ingested cannabis. But we were the first party to call for legalization. I stand with it. But visiting a friend who does ingest, I'm appalled by. They've created a system where you wouldn't think it was possible to lose money selling marijuana. But one thing they've done is cut out the people who know how to do it, because yesterday's criminals are today's experts. They're not asking them for help. They're going to a lot of former Conservative cabinet members and people who used to decry cannabis to run the companies that they clearly don't know how to do this. We need more supply. And one of the ways we need more supply, because of this reefer madness mindset when they drafted the legislation, was this idea that you could only grow cannabis indoors. That increases the environmental impact of the cannabis regulations at the moment is to drive up water use, to drive up electricity use, the energy drain of cannabis indoors. Anyway, they've managed to make a system that only Ottawa could do. How to lose money selling grass. We need to revisit it. It should not be a burden on the provinces. It shouldn't be a burden on Indigenous nations. One thing we should do is recognize that cannabis grown outdoors and organically to boost supply makes sense. We should also make sure that the ways in which cannabis is sold does not require a whole new issue of plastic pollution that we hadn't contemplated before, and to reduce the energy draw and water draw. And by the way, pesticides, because, and there is some debate about this, but growing cannabis inside greenhouses does tend to promote certain pest problems and mold problems for which they use more pesticides. So we're very conscious of the fact that this is an area that should be managed so that provinces don't have a financial hit. And we should be able to do that by revisiting the legislation in the next parliament. I applaud the Liberals for keeping that promise. Let's be clear. I may have a little bit of fun, but it's good to keep a promise. I wish they'd done it more. I'm checking for, yes, sir. Well, I think it's a shame. I think, and I'm sure a lot of members of my team would like it if I didn't answer questions. I think it's important to listen to the question and answer any question that's asked, and I think the Prime Minister should do so. Oh, well, his launch in front of Rideau Hall, I know Justin Trudeau well, and why did he choose that day? Why did he look so unhappy? Well, you know, he's uncomfortable in this election campaign. Clearly, he chose 4 days shy of the legal minimum. A 36-day writ is the legal minimum. He may have been feeling biblical with going with 40 days and 40 nights. I don't know. But I like to point out that does align with the great flood of Noah's Ark. And in this campaign, we are a bunch of amateurs and volunteers compared to the big party operations and their professionals. But I always like to remind people, amateurs and volunteers built the Ark. Professionals built the Titanic. So, so I've been asked. So before I leave the stage, and I hope you won't mind, but I've been given the high sign by one of my favorite friends in the world who stood with me at my wedding, who's our Deputy National Campaign Manager, Deborah Endiger. She's actually my boss. I'm going to stop now, and I want to stop by mentioning all the candidates who are here. And I did have it written on a nice piece of paper. I'm sure I did. Yes. Well, anyway, I'll just have to wing it. But some candidates are here who have not made it to the stage because it's so crowded. So, Nick, why don't you go first? Just you and Mike introduce yourselves, and I'll keep finding my list. Cameron, you go next. Cameron. Okay. Chris, will you help me out down here? You go next. Remo. Peter. Hannah.
Hannah Conover Arthurs, Davenport.
Woohoo! Norbert.
Norbert de Costa, Brampton North.
Pauline.
Pauline Thornham, Brampton Center.
Jessica.
Jessica Hamilton, Scarborough Rouge Park.
Tim.
Tim Grant, University Rosedale.
The next member of Parliament from Guelph.
Steve Dick from Guelph.
Nikki Ward.
Nikki Ward, York Southwestern.
Sean.
Sean Manners, Beach of East York.
Amanda.
Amanda Kane, Scarborough Southwest.
And Merry Christmas. Go ahead. Yeah. I also want to shout out, have I missed any Oh, yes, you haven't said anything yet. And a shout out to the first federal party leader in this country to come out as gay, our former party leader, Chris Lee. So, with that, je reste disponible pour les autres questions. Je pense qu'aussi, il y a les autres candidats qui ne parlent pas français, particulièrement Candice, tu parles français? S'il y a les autres questions, je reste ici disponible. I'll stay here, happy to answer any questions anyone has one-on-one. Love to take pictures with candidates. Don't run off. And thank you to all our volunteers who came out for the launch of our wonderful, full, complete, oh, there's my list. Wonderful platform. Thank you so much.